Welcome back to Environmental News, the good, the bad, and the ugly, where we break down complex environmental headlines into practical insights that you can use in your life and your work. I'm Stacy Savage, aka the Texas Trash Talker, founder and CEO of Zero Waste Strategies. We look at what's working, what's failing, and what can be pushed to be better. This week's good is all about refill shops and reusable packaging when they truly reduce waste and when they're just green PR. The bad story is a dense but important one. Texas is moving ahead with a landfill methane plan under the Clean Air Act that could shape how aggressively existing landfills are controlled. And the ugly. Washington lawmakers lining up a longer, softer landing for Spokane's waste-to-energy incinerator under the state's climate law, complete with free or low-cost carbon allowances. So let's dive in. For the good news, you've probably seen them on social media. They're bright, clean refill stores where customers bring glass jars or old bottles and fill up on soap, shampoo, cleaner, skincare products. Well, at Lufka Refillable Zero Waste store in Tampa, the process is straightforward. Customers bring in containers that they already own. These containers are weighed empty and then filled with liquid products, and then they pay based on how much product they actually add. Over time, some customers have been refilling the same container for 6 years. Shoppers describe refilling as a small but rewarding act, and they get a little dopamine hit from knowing that they're reusing packaging instead of throwing it away. Refill doesn't stop with niche boutiques. National and global brands are experimenting with reuse in different ways. Lush Cosmetics sells some products completely naked without packaging and offers discounts to customers who bring back certain containers. The Loop platform partners with major brands like Nestle and Coca-Cola to deliver goods in durable containers that are collected, washed, and then refilled for circulation. So is refill always better? Sustainability researcher Shelley Miller reminds us that reduce, reuse, recycle is a hierarchy. Reuse generally beats out recycling, but only if we use those durable containers long enough to pay back the extra energy and materials used to make them. A 2021 study that she co-authored found that ceramic coffee mugs need to be used between 4 and 32 times before it outperforms disposable cups on greenhouse gas emissions, water use, and energy demand. And plastic or metal reusable cups may need even more uses. There's also a convenience factor. If you drive out of your way just to refill one bottle, the extra transportation emissions could cancel out the environmental benefits. Refill and reuse make the most sense when they fit into your existing routines, like refilling near your workplace or along routes that you already travel. Experts emphasize that refill stores and specialized take-back programs like Pack Collective's system for hard-to-recycle beauty packaging are not silver bullets. They're most powerful when they replace single-use packaging and are scaled across many people because millions of small actions can add up to meaningful waste reduction. So here are some quick actions that you can take. You can fold refill into your normal routines instead of making special trips, and commit to reusing each container enough times to actually beat disposables. You can also prioritize reduce first, meaning buy less, avoid gimmicky reusable items that you won't use often, and focus on high frequency items like coffee cups, cleaning products, and personal care. For businesses and local governments, consider piloting refill or bring your own container programs at locations that people already visit, such as community centers, campuses, workplaces, or grocery stores. So participation doesn't require extra trips. And you can partner with reuse or take-back platforms for hard-to-recycle packaging and track actual reuse rates so that you're not just greenwashing. Now moving on to our bad story right here in Texas. It's a complicated but critical one about landfill methane regulations across Texas. Under Section 111 of the Federal Clean Air Act, the EPA sets performance standards for new sources of air pollution and then Under Section 111D, it issues emissions guidelines for existing sources such as municipal solid waste landfills. States have to submit plans that show how they'll bring those existing landfills into compliance with federal guidelines, and if they don't, the EPA can impose a federal plan upon them. For landfills, the relevant emission guidelines that they focus on is for landfill gas, especially methane, from sites that started or modified operations on or before July 17, 2014. The EPA set a deadline of May 2017 for states to submit their plans, and when many states lagged, it finalized a federal plan in 2021, which applies to states without approved plans. In Texas, that federal plan is currently in effect. Texas has now submitted a revised state plan for existing landfills that the EPA is proposing to approve. The plan implements the federal emissions guidelines by incorporating them into the Texas Administrative Code. And the EPA's technical review concludes that the plan meets the core requirements and regulations. Now, once approved, the Texas plan becomes federally enforceable, but replaces EPA's federal plan as a primary framework for existing landfills in the state of Texas. Here's why this is our bad story of the week. Federal rules allow states to adopt less stringent requirements in certain cases if they're able to provide technical or economic justification. Texas has used that flexibility to exempt specific closed landfills that stopped accepting waste between 1987 and 1993, arguing that they would not exceed the 50 megagram per year non-methane organic compound emission threshold, and therefore would not justify the cost of gas collection and control systems. In its earlier 1998 plan, Texas presented analysis claiming that these closed landfills would not have significant emissions by 2004, and EPA agreed at the time. Texas is now carrying that same exemption forward by explicitly excluding landfills that haven't accepted waste since October 9, 1993, and have no additional design capacity for new waste. The EPA is proposing to approve these continued exemptions, saying that it's reasonable application of the flexibility allowed in those guidelines. Texas has also aligned some of its state landfill gas control requirements with the federal technical standards so that a landfill in compliance with those state rules is considered to meet certain provisions. The idea is to avoid duplicative requirements where state and federal standards overlap, and the EPA is proposing to accept that equivalency. This causes strong concern for advocates because while the Texas plan technically meets federal requirements, these exemptions and equivalencies may leave some older landfills operating without gas collection systems. Methane from landfills remains a major climate pollutant in the state. So here are some action items you can take. For residents and advocates across Texas, you can track the rulemaking docket and submit comments if the proposal is still open, especially if you live near a landfill or work in solid waste. You can also ask local officials how they're going beyond the minimum state requirements on landfill gas control, including early installation of gas collection systems, enhanced monitoring, and organics diversion. For other states and professionals, let's watch how Texas uses this as a template. Your state could follow suit, or you can argue for stronger controls based on different local conditions. Also consider integration of landfill methane planning with broader organics diversion, composting, and anaerobic digestion strategies, so landfills are the last, not the first line of defense. Now on to our ugly story. Spokane operates the only waste-to-energy incinerator in the state of Washington, burning municipal trash and using the heat to generate electricity for roughly 11,000 homes. In 2019, the plant emitted more than 234,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalents, though only about 100,000 tons would be penalized under the state's climate program. Washington's Climate Commitment Act uses a cap and invest system that requires large emitters, like incinerators, to obtain allowances for their greenhouse gas emissions. Unfortunately, landfills are exempt from that program. So this means Spokane's incinerator, once it's fully under cap, could face annual compliance costs in the range of $2.5 to $8 million, depending on carbon prices. City officials warned that those costs would likely be passed on to ratepayers, hitting low-income residents especially hard. In response, lawmakers have advanced legislation that would provide the facility with no-cost carbon allowances or credits starting in 2027, which would cover a large share of its emissions and then stepping it down slowly over time. Under one version of this bill, the facility must cut greenhouse gas emissions by 20% between 2030 and 2039, by 70% between 2040 and 2049, and by 95% annually after 2050, while also preparing plans to reduce waste and meet safe climate targets. Spokane's mayor and local legislators argue that this bill is necessary to avoid sudden price shocks and to give the facility an on-ramp to compliance, framing it as a beta model that could show how incineration with controls is preferable to trucking waste long distances to landfills in other counties. Now, environmental groups are pushing back, warning that providing no-cost allowances pegged to the facility's full emissions gives it preferential treatment and sets a precedent for weakening the climate program, especially when earlier proposals lacked strong requirements for actual emissions reductions. While the current bill includes reduction timelines, the controversy highlights a broader tension. Should climate policy ease the burden on existing polluting infrastructure or drive faster transitions toward waste prevention, reuse, and non-combustion solutions? Now, if you live in Washington, here are a few action items for you. You can follow the Spokane Waste-to-Energy bill, which is often referenced as House Bill 2416, and contact your legislators on your position on no-cost allowances. You can also ask your local leaders to pair any compliance timeline with aggressive waste reduction, reuse, composting, and recycling plans so that the facility's burn volume and emissions fall in actuality, not just on paper. Now, if you're a community activist, use this as a case study for when your region weighs incineration, landfill expansions, or major upgrades. You can insist on full life cycle analysis and equity impacts, not just short-term rate considerations. So, this week's headlines remind us of three big truths. First, refill and reuse can be very powerful, but they only deliver climate and waste benefits when they're designed for real life, such as being used often, integrated into existing routines, and backed by solid data. Second, landfill methane rules in states like Texas show how much flexibility is embedded in our environmental laws and how easily meeting the standard can still leave climate opportunities on the table if exemptions become the norm. And third, deals like Spokane's no-cost carbon allowances expose the political trade-offs built into climate policy. Are we protecting vulnerable ratepayers or simply propping up polluting infrastructure instead of scaling prevention and zero waste systems? If you found this breakdown helpful, hit like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who cares about waste, climate, and environmental justice. Go ahead and drop a comment with your city and which story hits closest to home. Was it our good story regarding refill and reuse? Was it our bad story regarding landfill methane in Texas? Or was it our ugly story regarding waste to energy? And if you're a local government staffer, business owner, or community advocate who wants help designing practical zero waste solutions in the middle of all these policy shifts, go ahead and send me a DM. Thank you so much for watching. Again, this is Environmental News, the good, the bad, the ugly. I'm Stacey Savage, and I'll see you next week. Bye.